Maybe it would be better if I wasn't here at all.
Gojo, right?
It's Marin Kitagawa!
You're coming with me everywhere. I mean it!
So the summer 2025 anime season is absolutely stacked, with titles like Sakamoto Days, Kaiju No. 8, Dandadan, and Call of the Night set to put out a new season. But one anime that has a relatively small, however devoted anime fan base is Dress Up Darling. Now, to be honest with you, on first watch, I hated this show, but watching it back recently, I warmed up to it a little bit. Don't get me wrong, I still think it's very flawed in some ways, but I can understand why it's so compelling for some people, and as a result, it got an 8 on one of my 1-minute reviews. That said, I didn't want to talk about Dress Up Darling from a quality perspective, but I want to restart a conversation on fan service, because if there's one thing about this anime that will be apparent to you, is that there is a lot of fan service. Yet for all of the showing of its main character's skin, it doesn't make people as mad as, let's say, Fire Force or 7 Deadly Sins, and I kind of want to point out my theories as to why. So let's talk about it. So let's start here. On my members only page on YouTube, give it a shot by the way, I have a video called Let's Talk About Fan Service. It is a video that was flagged by YouTube for what they determined not suitable for most viewers, but neither here nor there. Now, in the video, I kind of make an initial point on what my thoughts on fan service are and what I think fan service should do. I believe that 90% of the time, the problem with fan service is not that it's there, but that when it's there, it doesn't serve a purpose for the story or actively makes the story worse. For example, how am I supposed to root for a character that constantly gropes their supposed friends or love interests? Here's another example. How am I supposed to get into the rhythm of a story when every time something serious or compelling takes place, they break the tension with ecchi? So the point of the video I made is that, hey, fan service is fine if you can present it in a way that actively helps your story or that is actively compelling. Simply just showing skin is not good enough in the, at the time, big 2021. Now, there have been anime before and since which I think have done really well in spurts at showing fan service and having it actively help their story. I.e., for all its faults, I actually think Mushoku Tensei uses fan service, and more broadly the topic of sex, to take its story into interesting directions that, had it not been for the other BS of this anime, would be compelling and a shining example on how to use fan service. I say all that to say that I think Dress Up Darling can be another example of good, honest fan service. And let's talk about why. So, a very small, quick backstory on Dress Up Darling. Our story follows a gentleman named Wakana Gojo, who is a bit of a loner because he's taken an interest to making Hina dolls, and as a result, he's deathly afraid that no one will accept him for his interest. What makes it even better is that the story is very clear that his specialty when it comes to these dolls is not actually about the making of the dolls' faces, as he still needs a bit of work on that. He's actually very good at designing them. Here's the thing though, he gets to put that to good use because he meets a girl named Marin Kitagawa, and by chance, they bump into each other, in which she discovers that he likes Hina dolls, and she comes up with the idea to use his services to make cosplay outfits. You see, she's a cosplayer, and she needs somebody to help her out with that. Now, I have a lot of thoughts about where their story takes itself from here, because I actually think they took the wrong direction. I think it would have been better had they made this a story about gender roles, acceptance of oneself, and their hobbies, as well as a backdoor look at the world of cosplay, as it's a very popular, but at the same time undocumented part of anime and anime culture. But the story, while touching on all of that, really focuses more on the romance story between the two main characters, being Gojo and Marin. And that's fine, I guess, if that's what you prefer, which I don't. However, I say it like that because while I do think that they leave a lot on the table when it comes to their focus on other aspects of their story, the way they tell their romance story to create moments of comedy, of youthful exuberance, of frenetic energy, as well as tension, and mixing those aspects together without any one of those things feeling out of place to their story, is on its own really good. And one of the ways they buttress their storytelling is with fan service. As you see in the world of cosplay, and usually cosplaying video games as well as anime, characters, particularly female characters, dress pretty revealing. That means the cosplayers themselves will dress pretty revealing, and as a result, Marin will show some skin. And it's here where we start with the first thing about this anime. They create situations in which the female character actually does want to show her skin and makes it very clear. AKA, they are very clear about consent. Now granted, a lot of these times she is consenting with the purpose of actively helping her cosplay be better. So it's not meant for, in the words of Gojo, be inappropriate, but it is comforting for a character like Marin to actively consent to the positions that she's in, which in turn, as an audience member, makes me feel comfortable with the situations that Marin and Gojo are in. This is important because, believe it or not, your character actually looks like a good person if they are doing something with the consent of another character that you actually like. That is not to say that you can't create situations in which a character did not consent before showing skin, but you need to understand the implications of what that does for your character. Meaning, sure, it's okay to show a character grope another character, but that makes them look like a bad guy. However, this is the initial step of what they do really well, because it's very clear that Marin is okay with the situation she put herself in. However, it's in fact Gojo who a lot of times is having trouble with the situation. Not because he doesn't want to be there or that he's not consenting, but it's because he likes this girl, and seeing the girl of his dreams half naked in his bedroom does things for him.
Please look. I want you to see.
What the hell was that?
But he also is respectful and doesn't want to take advantage of her, which is appreciated and makes the story compelling. And I think that's what separates Dress Up Darling from a lot of its other counterparts when it comes to fan service and what they're doing with it. They place it extremely well and make it a focal point of their story. Now, I can go on and on about scenes where they create some tension between these two characters who clearly have a thing for each other, but don't want to mess their friendship up, in ways where the characters have some very, let's just say, tense exchanges between each other. See episode 11. But here's the thing. This anime isn't afraid to use fan service to make legitimately funny scenes, but not in the cliche tropes that other animes make it. Case in point, the measurement scene, which I'm not going to spoil, but basically Gojo has to take Marin's measurements, which means she's got to strip down to her underwear. And this leads to Gojo having a full-on crisis in his head about how he's going to be able to get through taking Marin's measurements without his little friend damn near shooting off of his body. And you know what's interesting about this scene? In all of its glory, all of its comedic moments, it does show that Gojo does have a limit and is, at the end of the day, still respectful of Marin, despite the fact that he so desperately wants to do something inappropriate.
We didn't do anything inappropriate.
Huh?
You see, that's the thing. There's no ecchi, there's no groping, no roundabout excuses as to why a character took advantage of another character. It's just good fundamental storytelling to make a story funny with fan service when you want it to. You don't need a whole bunch of garbage to make a revealing encounter awkward and funny, because sometimes a revealing encounter can be funny and awkward all on its own. And I think that's the main thing for me, why I kind of like the way fan service is used in this anime. It's not used too much or too out of place. It's used to buttress their storytelling. It's like the core of a house. The foundation of Dress Up Darling is a story that is seemingly small but appreciative. It's the little moments of intimacy and youthful exuberance of two characters, like the beach scene and their cosplay photo shoot sessions, where the characters are interacting with each other. They like each other. They want to be respectful and help each other. The fan service is just meant to accentuate that these two are made for each other, but it doesn't take center stage of their romance story in those little fundamental scenes where not a lot goes on and not a lot of skin is showing. And I think that's the point in what I was trying to make with the fan service video and the Tamaki videos. Fan service on its own isn't inherently bad It's how you come at it from a storytelling perspective. If it's actively helping your story, then it can be great. There's a reason why people like sex scenes in the movies when they're done right. There is a reason why sex symbols are casted over and over again in films and TV roles, and that goes both for men and women. For every Yoriichi from Bleach, there is a Gojo from Jujutsu Kaisen. So when people get mad at fan service, I think most reasonable people are not saying that fan service shouldn't be there, or that the viewer who enjoyed that moment should repress themselves sexually. Most reasonable people are simply saying, hey, this moment of fan service actively hurts the story being told, and here are the reasons why. Whereas Dress Up Darling more often than not has its fan service help, not hurt its story. Now, don't get me wrong, they're not perfect. I think they go into the realm of overkill at times, specifically the times where Marin will completely miss the point as to why Gojo is uncomfortable, which, like, come on. But I wouldn't say it goes into the realm of offensive. And who knows, this video will come out just before season 2 releases, and by season 2, they could have completely messed it up and the fan service becomes almost as bad as 7 Deadly Sins. Also, there's a chance that they might actually grant my wish on making the story focus more on Gojo's acceptance of himself and his hobbies rather than a run-of-the-mill romance story that takes a ton of suspension of disbelief to get into. My point is that for one season, and for one season alone at the time of this video, I think Dress Up Darling is the shining example of how to make fan service a feature of your anime. A big feature, I might add, but at the same time, not turn off a section of your fan base. Okay, I think this is a good place to end the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Stay out of trouble, y'all, because I love you guys, even the haters. Y'all have a great rest of your day.